The namesake was inspired by grief for me. This was the most deep and powerful love story that I had witness to for 25 years of my life. With my father and mother-in-law. It was that story that we don't see of people who don't say I love you. It's like a series of still portraits, this film. I was brought up in Kolkata and I was part of Loreto Convent, and there we would have these elocution lessons where all the girls would stand like this and say, "Daffodils" by Wordsworth. Oh, the daffodils. There used to be some stock poems that the girls would have to learn. Wordsworth, the daffodils, the ringing of the bells. The bells, the ringing of the bells. This is what we would have had to recite. So it was a nice mix of what I knew from Calcutta and what she, dreamed of Calcutta, or her experience of Calcutta, Jhumpa's. Both Ghatak and Satyajit Ray, taught me about credits. So did Elaine Bass and Saul Bass, and looking out of your window, but you're seeing, Gogol running in Calcutta street, but inside you are, alone in your suburban house where you can scream in upstate New York, but no one will hear you.
I just wanted to know, based on my video also, I often get comments on that video about Irfan's body language. So I wanted to ask you that after this whole process of everyone being completely emotionally involved in this, having gained a lot from the original people this is based on, how much of an influence did you have on the actor's performance, or how much did you hold yourself back?
Life is much more interesting than what you fiction. So I told Irfan, "Tujhe bhi thoda maza aaya." And Tabu is another person for me, thank God, who is like this. I can just ask for anything, and it's not just that she will do what I ask, she will do it with such a mystery and such an enigma. And I love the name of your film, Co-Path. I hope you're all sick and psychopath.
Hello everyone, welcome to Film Co-Path. As you can see, I am beaming with happiness today as one of my dreams has come true. As you know, we have been celebrating the Satyajit Ray centenary this year along with the whole world. And this is what the great Ray had to say about the debut feature film of our esteemed guest today. Ray said, and I quote, "I cannot recall ever being impressed so much by a first feature. It is completely unlike any other film ever made in India, and shows complete command over every aspect of the medium. She is one of the pioneer filmmakers who opened the way for many other great filmmakers to follow in India and around the world. Her movies have won the Golden Lion at Venice, the Golden Camera, Silver Lotus National Awards, Golden Sayak. There are so many awards that if I have to say all of them, this entire time will be over. But irrespective of all these major national and international awards, perhaps the greatest recognition that our esteemed guest has is that her son considers her to be the best filmmaker of the world. And we agree, nothing can beat that. Mira ji, welcome to the channel.
Jai nepotism. My son believes that, so it must be true. That came as a bit of a winger. Yes. But thank you very much. Okay.
Of course, Veeradi, today we are going to discuss the movie which has completed 15 golden years today, The Namesake, starring Irrfan, Tabu and Kal Penn in the lead, which has also won multiple international awards and accolades. And it really feels very surreal that we are actually discussing this with you. So I will, before losing my mind, I will just jump to the first question.
Absolutely.
Mira, the major difference that we find in Namesake, the film, and from the original text is how you bring in Ashok and Ashima as the central characters. Where in the books, it was Gogol who was majorly the central characters. What made you make this vital change, which actually gave a very different perspective to this adaptation?
Well, The Namesake was inspired by grief for me. I experienced the loss of a parent, really, my mother-in-law in New York, very suddenly out of a medical malpractice, we thought. Um, and we had to bury her in a freaky snowstorm in New Jersey. And this was a lady who had never known, who had known only the red earth of East Africa. She had just come for this operation, and we were never expecting this to happen. And it was in that complete shock of losing somebody so close to me, and the first time that had happened, a finality of that loss, um, that I happened to read Jhumpa Lahiri's beautiful novel, which I had owned for 6 months before, but I had opened it at that time. On my way to India, I was filming the end of Vanity Fair, my film, Thackeray's novel. And it was on the plane I read The Namesake. And it was so, I felt in that melancholy that I was going through, I felt I had found a sister in the world who understood what it is to bury your parents in a place that is not their home. And it was so powerful, the impact of the story and the fact that I knew these people. I felt like I knew Ashok and Ashima, and mostly I knew Kolkata, and I knew Cambridge, Massachusetts, where the story was, as also based. I felt like I knew this world so deeply, and yet had never seen it on screen. So when the plane landed, literally in the airport in Delhi, I called Jhumpa in New York. I knew her. She had asked me to help her to shoot that first beautiful novel of hers, and we got to know each other a little bit. And she told me immediately that the rights are available, and they could be mine. And within a week, without exaggeration, I had the rights of The Namesake. And I also made a second call immediately to Sooni Taraporevala, my great friend and collaborator who wrote Salam Bombay, who wrote Mississippi Masala, and asked her if she had read The Namesake, and she had already read it. And I said, I love it. I want to make it. Will you adapt it? She said, yes. And for me, immediately, right from the beginning, as we lost my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, we lived with my in-laws for like 25 years in New York, in everywhere. And my father-in-law, held her hand in the hospital and kept saying 59 years, 59 years. And it had so happened that she had passed away on their 59th wedding anniversary. And this was the most deep and powerful love story that I had witnessed to for 25 years of my life, with my father and mother-in-law. And this was what I wanted to pay homage to, and I was inspired by, and the grief and the melancholy of that loss, which we never expected. It was so shocking. And so, it was like a powerful bolt of inspiration that made me live my life a little bit with more, sort of, can you say, comfort or compassion or something. I had to express this grief. And I know I've been around the block. I've made movies for 40 years now. So I know that it's not always possible to be inspired all the time. It's a privilege to have inspiration. And it was that inspiration, which was fueled by grief. But then it was just like giving birth, I swear, because 9 months after I called Sooni, we were shooting the film. It was that kind of flow. Everything sort of worked out, But for me, always from get-go, it was Ashok and Ashima's story. It was that story that we don't see, of people who don't say I love you, and people who don't hold hands and cuddle and go out on Valentine's Day. People who simply sit and have tea, and the way you look at each other speaks of the volumes of the history you have shared and the love, and so that was that. And so Gogol was always important, but a third act, not Ashok and Ashima were the main event from the beginning. I always say in adaptation, you have to have a point of view, because cinema is a different form, a different medium than literature. And for me, I have to understand and love the spirit of the book, which I completely loved. and wanted to have and completely, honor Jhumpa and also bring in her family. Her family is all over this film, as you know, right? It's all I shot with them, and Ashok Ashima based on her mother and father. I mean, Irfan spent weeks with her father, Amar Lahiri, and also with her mother, and all that. So we we did that, but it has to be. But it can't be every page. It should not be every page. The movie should not be every page. It should be, this whatever you wish to make of it. But for me, it was the parents, and I also had gone to college in America for the first time. I'd left India when I was 18, 19 in 1976. And you never saw an Indian on the streets those days. I'd see an Indian lady in a sari. I would cross the street and say, "Hello, hello, I'm Indian. How are you?" Like this, and that was, we saw many Ashimas all the time. Like in Cambridge, I used to see with the husband's coat and the socks and pulling the laundry. I'd seen these images, but I'd never certainly seen them on screen. So. Anyway, so it came out of a real desire also to capture that sense of love in exile, finding love in exile. And Tia Lahiri, Jhumpa's mom, who's just passed away, God bless her, she used to share with me, the favorite Ghatak films, the favorite, Jiri Jiri, Joyak Tali, all these lovely folk songs that she used to sing to Jhumpa. I would ask for all this, the photo albums, everything, and I love that. I love to create a mosaic of music, to evoke stuff. And so we have all this stuff really of their beloved ballads and whatever, so that it feels like of a family, And also what happened was I was brought up in Kolkata for many years. In the summers, I would go 12 summers, and I was part of Loreto Convent. And there, and there we would have these elocution lessons where all the girls would stand like this and say, "Daffodils" by Wordsworth. "Oh, the daffodils, the daffodils." This is what we were trained in Kolkata. And so when but Jhumpa was raised in Rhode Island and would go and come to Calcutta, But when in that scene, when Ashok sees Ashima for the first time and she wears his shoes, which is all in the book, it's beautifully in the book, then we have her coming in and saying, reciting Wordsworth, the daffodils. And it was not from the book, but it was exactly what we would do in Kolkata. And when Jhumpa saw that, she said, "How did you know? What did I? It's so fantastic." I said, "Well, that's what we used to do. There used to be some stock poems that the girls would have to learn. Wordsworth, the daffodils, the ringing of the bells. The bells, the ringing of the bells. This is what we would have had to recite." So it was a nice mix of what I knew from Calcutta and what she, dreamed of Calcutta, or her experience of Calcutta, Jhumpa's. And it was great. And then, of course, Sooni Taraporevala is just like the champion writer, adapter, visualizer as well, So, and we have a very shared sensibility. So, I remember when that beautiful scene Sooni wrote when he comes off the plane with his head shaved, and I wanted to explain about the head shaving, but not to preach to you about it. So I wanted to do a rap song where he gets his hair cut in a black barber shop, in New York. And actually that was the first day of shooting, because we actually were shaving off his hair, actually on camera. And so everything else was bald after that, So, but anyway, I wanted a rap song that explained the tradition of it, so that it's not just in our culture, we do this because of respect. And how like homework baji.
Yeah.
So, commissioning a great, like sort of young rappers and creating this song and having the song so we could play it while Kal is getting his head shaved. These things are all building blocks. So if Sooni hadn't written that beautiful scene of his shaved head, we wouldn't have all these other things to put together before it. So it was really excellent like that. And then I'm also very informed always by photography, and there's a little chapter I made actually in the DVD of the Namesake, where there's a chapter on how the photographs of different photographers, from Raghubir Singh to Dayanita Singh to William Eggleston to even Gary Winogrand, how those photographers influenced the look of the Namesake, because we made it a huge asset. I'm just, stop me whenever you want, but I'm just a huge asset of the film is the cinematographer, Frederick Elm. He's a legend. He's somebody who did Blue Velvet. He did so many Cassavetes movies. I mean, he's just extraordinary artist. And it was his first time in India, and he was just, loving it. And we had always thought of it. I had brought this to him, that it's like a series of still portraits, this film. It was not about a lot of movement. It was a series of like almost old-fashioned images, but really very photographic quality, and Fred really understood that and lit that way also so beautifully, and we had a very extraordinary collaboration, and the only collaboration, so far. And so it was, it became like all over piece like that.
Mira, we actually wanted to talk about, this authentic Bengaliness you bring to the film.
Sure. We three are all three Bengali.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Believe me, it has not escaped me.
Exactly. And there are so many films where, this Bengali stereotypes are kind of a very loud played Bengaliness is shown. But in this film, and, particularly the way Irrfan Khan and Tabu acts, like that airport scene where Irrfan Khan just nods his head to say goodbye. That's my father. That kind of a feeling I get when I see that image. And on top of that, you also have so many intricate, small subtle things put, like the greetings card Tabu is making. There's one lady, aged lady on the balcony. Those subtle intricacies you bring into the film, I mean, they are marvelous. And I just have one request for you. Our friend Paroma, she has a very beautiful video essay on how Irrfan Khan had a true Bengali father character played in the Namesake. If you get a chance, please watch that.
Please send me, Paroma.
Yeah, I will.
I think I've seen one maybe.
Possibly.
It might have been yours, but please send me.
I would love to.
No. He, firstly, I told you, well, I think, my training and my eye, everything has come from life, has come from cinema verite, has come from actually living with people whose stories I'm telling, right? In the early documentaries that I made, about 7 years of them.
Yes.
So the particularity of people's lives is very, very meaningful to me. How somebody is so particular versus another person, and especially in our country and in our cultures, we have so many ways to express that. In any case, so the biggest juice comes from life itself and people like that. So as I said with the Namesake, it was not just only Jhumpa's family, only that, but also because of the knowledge of Calcutta, of being there, loving it, doing theater there, knowing there, for so many years. And Jhumpa's writing also in the cutout of the cards, which of course I had done in my own life, because we used to do that. The cards would be so interesting when they would come, never save them, then you'd put them on other cards. That's how we were all raised. It was very like socialist. We never threw out anything, And so Jhumpa was writing about that, about her mother's generation that way, So we do it, So that came from the film, from the book, and other things you just build up, like for instance, the political graffiti in northern Calcutta. with the graffiti in New York City. It's a with seamlessly, I can take you into that seesaw of here and there, with graffiti, with the bridges, the Howrah Bridge, and the Queensboro Bridge, outside Ashima's window when she's pregnant, and she's dreaming of that bridge, and one bridge leading into another bridge. These for me were serious keys in capturing this state of like a seesaw of between worlds, looking out of your window, but you're seeing, Gogol running in Calcutta street, but inside you are, alone in your suburban house where you can scream in upstate New York, but no one will hear you. That is the contrast.
You actually start
And
with the credit fonts, the fonts, the Bengali fonts and the English fonts, they merge into each other.
yes. So it's so I think of credits as a film within a film, that every piece of the film should be informing of the film and the theme of the film, and so the credits were very vital again. The credits, like, of course, both Ghatak and Satyajit Ray, taught me about credits. So did Elaine Bass and Saul Bass and those amazing, credit designers of the James Bond movies. That how you can really take the rus of every element. And I was lucky with Design Temple. A friend of mine who doesn't do credits, but I love her design. She did the credits for me. Divya Thakur in Bombay. Those credits, which then she did Reluctant Fundamentalist also after that. But and the credits are exactly that. How the Bengali becomes the English, becomes the Bengali. Now I've seen it is copied many times by many people. But we were there a little early in the game.
OG.
Yeah, OG.
OG, yeah. Young OG, please. Yeah.
This whole emotional connection that you had to build with Jhumpa Lahiri's family also, and that you're saying that Irfan and Tabu maybe also had to interact with them. So I just
Yes.
wanted to know, based on my video also, I often get comments on that video about Irfan's body language. Is that, the director also has a large part to play, which you haven't talked about in the video. And I'm like, I know, I agree. So I wanted to ask you that after this whole process of everyone being completely emotionally involved in this, having gained a lot from the original people this is based on, how much of an influence did you have on the actor's performance, or how much did you like hold yourself back? How did you like go about it?
No holding back. Absolutely. And it was not a separate thing. It was how to get what you want, basically, what a director does, and the process of the family and acculturation and the accent with the caterer of the Bengali caterer of our team in New York, which is who Irfan patterned his accent on. All this was all building blocks for the actors, and also remember one thing, very important. Irfan had never been in America before. He had never been in America. And it was like spellbinding for him, to be in Times Square, to live in Times Square. He used to live. He said, Mira ji, मैं तो यही रह रहा हूँ जहाँ light तो बंद नहीं होती. And, like it was a dazzle for him, And don't forget also that it was his first international film, even though he was very much at home with me. We are old friends, but it was still his first film outside anything he had done. So both those things made him, and he is, of course, as we all know, a superb actor who observes and who learns and who takes in everything. So he was already, he said, ये तो bonus है कि मैं भी पहली बार आया हूँ, अशोक भी पहली बार आता है. ये तो bonus है. So he actually was seeing America with the eyes of Ashok. He actually could, number one, which is really great, a great help. And number two, by the time he's just a fine instrument. So I can ask him anything, and believe me, I did. So that I would say to him, like he would say to me, we would like that scene in the car when he tells Gogol about how he named him Gogol and the accident. And he did it beautifully. And then he looked at me, and I was about to ask him for another take. And he looked at me and he said, "Aapko kuch aur chahiye?" And I said, "Ji." And I said, "Aap zara, he said, "Rona chahiye?" I said, "Nahi, rona nahi chahiye. But jaise rona aata ho, but niche nahi girna chahiye, aansu." Because Ashok is like that.
Yeah.
He's not like, he's gonna cry. No. But we have to feel thoda bahut ke sensation of that overwhelmedness that then you control. That's Ashok. तो मैंने बोला, वो take जो दिया is what you see.
Yeah.
Sublime. So, and similarly, a lot of direction, like like when Jacinda, the blonde girlfriend, comes in for the first time, and I think he has told her not to kiss them, that we don't kiss them, right?
Yeah.
The parents, and she kisses the father, Irfan, right?
Yeah.
So then life is much more interesting than what you fiction. So I told Irfan, "Tujhe bhi thoda maza aaya," and
Yeah.
like I don't want to be heavy. Ke yaar, it's a gori cheese. Maine chhu liya. Oh my God, culture, cross cultural. Oh my God, that's not. I mean, like it's not interesting to me, and life is not like that anyway.
Yeah.
I remember my very devout, quite religious, very devout father-in-law. When he saw Rani Mukherjee came home to our house, he was like a little boy. He was like a young boy. He just couldn't get over it, of her. And he was like, so it's like, that's life. I never expected, but it would be like that. And so similarly, I said to him, "Tujhe bhi thoda, maza thoda aana chahiye yaar, gori." Anyway, so
Irfan is
that's
actually
the
shy, and he looks
he's
at
shy,
Tabu.
and he's shy, and he's like, "I still have it in me, guys, but I'm shy." But he's not like a drip. He's not like a drip. He's not like a bloody, kya yaar, he's not like that.
Yeah.
He's not uptight, and that's a shock. He's chill. He's actually cool. He's content. And he has that, and of course Irfan. So I ask for it, and then he'll do it, and he's so good at it. Whatever you ask, he's so good at it. If he agrees with you, but we always agreed. Sometimes it was not like I even had to ask. He would predict, "Ke Mira, tujhe ye chahiye na?" I said, "Haan yaar, de please." But this time, so we never made it a drip. We never made it, like a textbook of cross-cultural estrangement. Please, thank you very much. It was real people, and some things, like I was just for photographic and for knowing how isolated one can feel in that country, despite every gadget and every luxury around you. That I really wanted to I really wanted to, hit your gut with. And that came through that image of, her sari going up the in American life, suburban life, the garage shows you your entire life, family. Everything is in the garage, the whole chapters of a family's life. And so I wanted very much that image of a sari clad, anguished Ashima with the American life behind her, the garage. But, with this, the violence of that metal door that will, opens up to reveal her grief, to reveal her grief, but also her isolation. Like no one will hear her, But those type of, that was very much for me, very important, to make images that would consolidate, would really nichoro, which would just have the essence of what it's like to be abroad, you know, and what it's like actually not just to be abroad, but to fit in abroad, to fit in.
Mira, about that particular scene when we wanted to talk about this, you talked about the garage opening up, and there was this when Tabu gets to know, Ashima gets to know about Ashok's death, and there is this beautiful sequence that Ashima doesn't know what to do. She suddenly goes to the kitchen and she switches on the lights, and she's like, she doesn't know what to go and why her actions are absolutely makes no sense. So how did you do that? Like, you should go up and go to the kitchen and you should switch that light on, because normally we don't see those sequences shot like that. We see an immediate mental breakdown, but here we see her moving around, going to the garage, then going out and finally screaming. So what was your entire idea about that particular sequence of Ashok's death?
The idea of switching on the lights is in the book, which is I think it's a beautiful example of irrational and kind of behavior when you're in a crisis. But that, I think, I can't remember, but I think it's from the book, that she switches on all the lights. And then going into the garage was what I was talking to you about just now, which is really, even from my Indian eyes, seeing American garages in these years I've lived, this kind of example of American life. What I was just saying, to see an Indian woman against her map of American life that she has now lived, but now she is alone and yet deeply, herself Indian, and to speak the isolation of that anguish was that I was in my mind, that was all in my mind in terms of wanting that, in the garage, this thing going up. I had, her alta, the toes, and then the saris, all that was in my, that is because all these things can really, I think, be a powerful arrow in our hearts, but also in our understanding of what it is to be in that life of suburbia and foreignness. And you'll never, there's no one there. That's the other thing. When you come from Kolkata, especially, and you come to these suburban places, there's no one there. Mm-hmm. And it's, the aloneness is terrifying initially, Anyway, so that part, I think I constructed. The lights was given to me by the novel. And so then it's just choreography, like you'll come up here, we'll do this, we'll do that, this will happen, and then you'll exit. And then the metal door will lift up to reveal. That's all in my head. So I just tell Tabu, and Tabu is another person for me, thank God, who is like this. I can just ask for anything. And it's not just that she will do what I ask, she will do it with such a mystery and such an enigma and such a, of course, a craft and assurance, but not something still over that, which is not predictable, which is, you can't put your finger on it. Irrfan had the same quality, and that's why we love them, that's why they are so amazing. So, yeah, so it's all quite choreographed. The whole thing is very choreographed. And I was also very influenced by that Soviet style of shooting that Ritik Ghatak did in Subarna Rekha and all the Megha Takatara, and, that kind of highly heightened, super close up of the eye, going into super wide expanse of them walking down a landscape, whatever, that type of, I chose the house that Ashok, when she comes and she does the beginning of the film. So the house was chosen in Yonkers. When Ashok is leaving home and she's at the window, and that's an unusual viewpoint kind of thing. Just anyway, it was a fantastic vantage point. And so even that apartment that it was a broken down nothing in a corner that gives me that height, that he's going to go up the height and disappear and she's going to be at the window. We filmed a lot there. so that we refurbished, we rebuilt this house just so that we could have access to that window, that became Ashok Ashima's flat, so I don't know why I'm telling you this. I'm telling you this because every frame has to have that layers and has to have that, it has to it has to be nichored, it has to be squeezed, it has to have the essence, because otherwise, it's just 2+2 filmmaking, and I don't subscribe to that much. I try not to,
Yes. It shows, it definitely shows in your work how much of the layering that goes in. It's really beautiful.
And the music is, of course, a
Yeah,
huge part of that,
yeah.
Which was a really very, very careful work with Nitin Soni, who's so amazing. But Nitin, and again, it was his first soundtrack with me, and actually, even for him to make a dramatic feature, he hadn't done that much, and it was very painstaking for weeks and weeks. But the inspiration was this great Bhatiali song, this great song he had recorded that I loved first, and that was the real inspiration of choosing Nitin and using that song, which we use in Namesake, and building the whole soundtrack. But that was the beginning, was that Bhatiali. Yeah.
Mira, tell me something. The way you put the two cultures, the contrast between the two cultures subtly. There's so many things to pick up. If I go by, say, the character of Maxine, Gogol's first girlfriend, the way she's told to not touch and not kiss, but she still does that. Or, she thinks this visit to Calcutta for the ritual is just like a trip. So is there any, personal experience saying where you think that, the American culture, it's kind of, they look at their surroundings very differently than the way we do?
Completely. As you said, exactly, that she'll think going to Calcutta is like a bit of an adventure trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the question is, do I?
So is it only coming from the book, or you had put your experiences, your?
No. The whole thing, the book is very vital for the spirit, for the story, for the characters, all that. But how one inhabits it or creates that spirit is a big part of this medium, and big part of, I think, having a vision about it. So that knowledge, exactly that, that's why I wanted to make this, because I knew these two worlds so deeply. Also, the world of Moshumi, who's wanting to who just happens to be Bengali, but who's not, wants to be French.
Yeah.
And she's French. I know so many people like that. I mean, I just do, because I think I can say we grew up rooted in India. This was all I knew. This was what I knew. But what in India is a vast thing. It's not just simple and uncomplicated. It's very beautifully layered and worldly and all of that. But a lot of these. So anyway, I came from that. But a lot of these people that I met in the West, and I lived with and loved also and moved in with, whatever it is, as you said earlier, it's a different way of looking at relationships, a different way of looking at the world, a different way of expressing dosti, a different way of, how I used to think when I left India, we never used to use the word I. I never said, I had a bad summer, I had a depression, I had, I don't recall thinking like that. Forget about speaking like that. And I came to a university where routinely it used to surprise me that my friends would say, I really had a bad summer, a whole summer, I had it was a very, and it took me a long time to understand that this was a completely individual culture about the individual. And I came from a culture where the self was not actually existing. It was always us, the family, this thing, relatives. You go to, you travel only to meet the relatives. I never had a holiday in the summer, whatever. We went to meet, Babu Chacha in Amritsar. That was it. There was never a trip to see even anything, Ajanta, anything, nothing. It was just, how it is. That's how we were raised.
Yeah.
So that was a very different way of raising. So yes, of course, all of it is informed by that knowledge, and also by the intimacy with which I know the Western world, the Maxine's world. It's a very interesting world. Even Jhumpa writes about it so well because she also knows that world very well, which is, you go off to country house, summer house, you don't do anything, you're just in shorts, you read books, you take a melon and you cut it up and eat it. There are no meals. You just, chill. And in that way, even if you have a guest, you don't care. You don't even know where they are. You just, it's a very individual way of chilling, Put it all to the frame, that knowledge of just how people are. And it's not that they're unloving. It's just the cultural, it's just how it is,
Yeah.
And I know great actors, who are friends as well, like Glenn Headley. The great Glenn Headley played Jacinda's mom, and she's a great actress. But because we were friends, she played it for me. So I also was working with really great people, always, So they bring all that to it, but it certainly comes from a knowledge of how to dress that room, how to be in that room, what they would say, how they would be with Gogol, how Gogol would be a kind of exotic.
Yeah.
A little different, like you have to be respectful around him or something.
Yeah.
There's a certain, distance.
Yeah.
So, a lot of that was brought.
Yeah, Mira, we wanted to talk to you about the casting, the magical casting of Tabu and Irfan. So, like, how did that actually happen, and what was your idea when you actually got both of them, and were you initially looking for them, or you had somebody else in mind, or was it from the beginning the same?
Well, Irfan was always Ashok Ganguly from the very beginning. For 15 years, I owed him big time because he was playing a good, decent role in Salam Bombay in 1987, and then became too tall for the gang of street children who were all malnourished and half his size. So I had to uncast him from the role of Salim. But there was only one more scene he could play as the scribe, and he played that. And I told him, I said, Irfan bhai, I won't forget, I'll be watching you. And so it took 15 years, I think, since Salam to have me call him up for Ashok Ganguly. And he immediately said yes. And so, he came to see me immediately. I was in Bombay and in a pink linen shirt, and he was just like ready to go, And so he was always going to be Ashok, and was Ashok. And I had initially cast Konkona Sen, whom I adore, as Oshima.
Okay.
Even though it was very hard for Konkona, who was so young at the time, to play the mother of Gogol in the second half of the film, But and it was quite a chase to find. Well, now that I'm talking about it, I might as well tell you that I had the crazy idea to ask Abhishek Bachchan to play Gogol. And
Wow.
I have always stayed very far from Bollywood stars because they don't just work with my type of movie. Normally, the risk taking in it, they are not, whatever it is. I only great actors like Irfan Bhai or Nasir Bhai or Shifali Shah, or they've agreed to be with me. But otherwise, flavor of the month movie stars generally doesn't work out. Anyway, I had a long correspondence with Abhishek and met him and this and that. And then as we were getting closer to shooting, I got this, it started to change. His dates became unavailable. And there was all this question about, I can't be kissing on screen because, my audience is not ready for that and all that. And I said, this is certainly no kiss fest, let me tell you. This is a show can film. So, I wouldn't worry about the kissing. But anyway, all this talk started to happen. And it was not feeling like it would happen at all. And then my son, Zoran, who's, was 14, I think, at the time, and he came to me and he said, Mama, you've got to see, I've got the guy, I've got Gogol for you. And I said, who? And he said, there's this guy, Kal Penn, he's in Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. This totally hilarious but puerile, teen comedy that was burning up the screens that summer in New York. And he sat me through, Zoran took me and sat me through this Harold and Kumar for Kal. Right. And I was like, oh, very interesting. And I really liked him. And I also really liked that he was the genuine thing. He was the American. He was an American. And I was just having nightmares thinking of getting Abhishek Bachchan to act, American. And, how can I make him smaller, cut him off at his knees, whatever. Of course, no kissing, whatever it was. Anyway, the dates looked absolutely, after 1 year or so of talking, they seemed out the window. So it was thanks to Z that I found Kal Penn. And Kal bounded into my office within a week in New York, because lo and behold, out of sheer coincidence, he had tried to buy the rights of this novel, the year before. And he was told, sorry, you missed the bus, we've sold it to Mira, kind of thing. So he'd already really wanted to be Gogol, which I didn't know. And he came in and he was so lovely, and he needed, he has the hunger for the part, because no one would have given him a dramatic role. They would have given him what he did, which is comic and wonderful. But this type of depth of role, he did not ever get. And also, anyway, and he was the real thing. And also he told me this lovely story that really affected me, which is that when he was 8 years old in a New Jersey mall, he saw the marquee on the cinema, Mississippi Masala. And he said, look at that Indian word, masala. And his parents then they went to see the movie. And he said, because I saw people like myself on screen for the first time, I realized I could become an actor. And so, for him, it meant a lot to be in this movie. And it shows, again, that hunger to do it right. And he has been, that is his story in any case. His parents are, Gujarati, living in New Jersey, different, exactly his story. So he really brought to it a great fervor that was so authentic again. And no one who's not lived in this, it's the same thing as you're saying about the West, American body language and how it's the same thing about us, like here, like to have an Indian play on NRI in America is not simple. Right. Robert De Niro to play an Italian from Sicily is not simple. He's an American first, so it's like that's the thing that our actors who are in India alone will not, I had the same thing about casting Riz Ahmed in Reluctant Fundamentalist. I had Fawad Ali Khan. I had like a lot of, great Indian actors also, but they didn't have that worldliness, that, sharky worldliness there. I can walk into Wall Street, I can lace you there, I can take Kate Hudson out for dinner tonight and I can propose to her, whatever. That kind of savoir-faire, that killer savoir-faire of an Asian boy in the Western world. I live around it, I see it. So it's a quality. It's not easy to just put on, and that's what Riz has. And, that was what it is. So it's that thing that Kal Penn had, very much so, in his bones,
Miradi, I have a very interesting
Haji.
observation. And I'm not sure if I'm right. I just wanted to check with you. I have seen in one of your interviews where you were telling, when you were shooting Kama Sutra, and there were MPs all crowding in your shooting spot, where you had to fake script saying "Bachao, ye shadi nahi
Yeah, ये
karni,
शादी नहीं हो सकती.
ye shadi nahi ho sakti." And I have that dialogue in the Namesake when Gogol
It's
marries
possible. Yes.
Moshumi. So I thought, is it like that fake script which you could not actually use? You have it here.
No, what I didn't have it. No, I don't think I did it for that reason. Tell me, I'm sorry, I have not seen the Namesake in a long time, but he tells it. Oh yes, they are joking about it.
They are
Yes.
They're
joking
joking
about
about
it.
Yeah.
it. ये मेरा
Exactly
दीवानापन
those
है.
dialogue. Yes.
Yeah, correct.
ये शादी नहीं हो
So
सकती.
that is absolutely right. It's like a takeoff of Bollywood tropes, and even the song is is one of our classics, right? Mera Divanapan, but it is by Sheila,
Sushila
great
Raman.
singer, Sushila Raman, and it's again thoda hatke, like it's exactly like Gogol and Moshmi, like they're not. It's not Anandji Anand Bakshi. It's like it's just their own flip version, right? So the whole thing was that ye shadi nahi ho sakti. This is how NRI kids grow up with these kind of tropes of our Bollywood cliches and stuff like that. So yeah, it's just fun. It's just fun, but it's fun that kind of generation, they haven't grown up in India. They recognize it as fun and it means something, but it doesn't mean what it means to us, So I wanted to always again highlight the difference between being from there and not being from there, and not being from there, what you still love about being from there.
So why don't we talk about our favorite scenes and ask Mira about it? So Paroma, would you like to go first?
Miradi has already mentioned the scene. We were discussing the film before we spoke to you, Miradi, and they asked me what my favorite scene is, and I said, of course, the barber scene. That has to be my favorite. When she chose that rap song, and it's so wonderful. The contrast, the cut-ins with Irfan shaving his head and him. So the whole song playing in the background, so you know exactly what is happening, like what you said. So I think that is already established. But since we are already talking about a favorite thing, and you said that the film was all about still photographs. It was kind of a collection of photographs. So there was that scene where Ashima finds out that her father has passed away, and she cries out. And when Gogol comes into the room and he sees that image of his parents on the bed, just hugging it out, and they have this humongous shadow on the wall against a really dim yellow light. That was that shot. It's really powerful and it's really beautiful to me. So that's definitely one of my favorites. Yeah.
Thank you. That lamp, that I really feed myself with a lot of contemporary art and whatever I can see, and that lamp, which was in Gogol's room, of all those animals that would dance around him, that lamp was created by Nalini Malani, wonderful artist from Bombay, and who I saw an image. I saw one of her exhibitions of this kind of shadow imagery, on the walls, and I asked her, and we created that for Gogol's room, so that we can, like, it's just basically something that transports you, in a way, and of course the shadow of it in that scene was just that larger than life thing, that will possess you. So yeah. Yeah. So I'm just saying that because, like, art fuels art, for me. It really is like for me a lot, and that's what that came from, And density is very important to me. So that in the I think it is in the book where she writes, that Ashok shaves his head for his father's death, and Gogol, I don't think, does in the book. Sooni made him do it in the book, which was great. So I wanted to have in one quick quick sequence, that sense of tradition of Ashok and the little Gogol and the big Gogol and him shaving, and all of it could be united by this song, this rap song, which unites tradition and the action that comes from father to son, and so I love to amp it up, to make it as dense as you can, but not just to, I hope, show off, but to get the emotional through line to understand. Because, a lot of what I do or we do is to walk that tightrope where you make films of all your own people and culture, whatever it is, but the world is seeing it, but you don't make it for them. But you don't make it to confuse them. You're walking the tightrope where you just have to find a way in to that emotional truth, but not never to explain or to pander, but to just create that emotion as best you can. But our medium is so amazing, cinema, because it allows you to use art, music, the way you're shooting performance. I mean, it has so much that helps, that you basically can create a world. And it's important to maximize that world. That's my big word on the set, is how to maximize it. Anyway, yeah.
Mira, one of the iconic scenes which we really have to talk about, and it has been talked about so many times, but I possibly cannot let the opportunity go, where Gogol and Ashok are going towards the sea, and the Oshima is waiting with the child, and then all this for no camera, and he just indicates something like that to her, and he just sits down with Gogol. He says it like a pure Bengali father would, and that that expression, will you remember this day? So how did that come along? What was the conceptualization of that iconic scene?
That's an iconic scene, actually, also from this book story. The dialogue is included, and it's and again, it's from my side, it was about finding that right amazing location, that Rockaway Beach, where you see the car bending there, you see the beach, you'll see this, it's that was a big part of finding the right place for it. And then it was very photographic. I loved all those images of, and we had the wonderful team. So the costume design, Arjun, the red and the green of Oshima against that wintry cold, that gray silver of New York, and the car, of course, and all that. The photographic quality of the scene was vital and that was what that location gave us. And then it was in the book. It is an iconic scene from the book, which keeps recurring. And of course, it was important to do it with that same sense of depth, I think, and I hope beauty, and it's the both of them. They're amazing, those two. He's just, it's lovely with kids, because kids, they can't some over cute kids can pretend, and I can't bear them. But most kids who are not into this, they are like, they don't know what they're just, why aren't we here? Why are we, without a camera? It's like, what? It's nothing important about it for him, right? Mm-hmm. But so that kid was lovely. And yeah, I'm very sensitive to how kids are shown on film, because a lot of times they're shown in this infantilized manner, which has nothing to do with them, nothing to do with what kids really are like.
I wanted to talk about this scene which you have adapted in your background, Shubhadeep, because this scene, there's so many scenes which we spoke about. There's this beautiful scene of Irrfan when he's calling Ashima for the last time, and the way he puts his hand, and they're so celebrated scenes. But this scene, I love the way these four characters, they are seeing the Taj Mahal, and for minutes they stop. There's like second where you show that they're just looking at that beauty. I mean, that's the kind of effect Taj Mahal actually has on you, right? Yeah. And I also love that feeling in the book. If I correctly remember, Gogol actually thinks about going into architecture in kind of, in steps. But here you show he sees the Taj Mahal, he takes the decision, I'm going to be an architecture.
Yeah.
So this is a film, this is a story, this is a narrative, but suddenly in a few moments, you talk about, this emblem of India, this beautiful piece of architecture and art. I love that scene. I love that sequence and how you get it done.
Thank you so much, because it was exactly for that reason that it's just an unbelievable miracle of the world, and it has that impact, as you know, and as I know. But also there was this great pressure. How do we film it? Also in very limited time, because you get no time at all to film in the actual Taj Mahal, like 3 to 4 hours. In no time at all, can I do anything justice? Here about the Taj. So it was and yeah, I'm glad you feel it, because it was a pressure. Can we get it done? In which will properly monumentalize this unbelievable monument. But it's amazing. It is amazing, and it's one of our favorite places. And Mahmood also loves it, and we are hoping to. Now we have a new highway from our house in Delhi, which takes you to the Taj for 1.5 hours. They are saying. So I'm going to take that highway as soon as I get there.
Mira, when were we getting the Amrita Shergill film? We are like waiting.
No, I'm all, you see my Amrita Shergill. I'm really into it. We were set to shoot in September, but because of COVID in India, we really not responsible to shoot it then. So we've decided to shoot it in March next year.
Okay.
Right.
So it's all set. Getting all set, but we've had to push the shoot because of COVID,
right?
As so many things have happened. But yeah, so I'm working on, I'm still working on that pretty much first, most importantly. And so soon, next year, definitely. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for your passion for cinema and for my work, and let me know if I can help. I love the name of your film, Copath. I hope you're all sick and psychopath, film Copath.
that was the idea, I guess.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mira.
Okay, thank you, Mira.
My pleasure. Right. Thanks a lot. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.